L.Q. Jones, Strother Martin, Dub Taylor, I would definitely say were part of Sam Peckinpah's repertory company. In fact, I think Sam Peckinpah should have the title repertory company because he worked with a lot of his people, a lot of his crew, a lot of his actors over and over and over again, and they appear in his films as a tradition. L.Q. Jones and Strother Martin started on Major Dundee, went on to the Wild Bunch, and ended up on with Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Elisha Cook was in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Don Levy was in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. He kept his same group of actors, same group of people. Ernest Borgnine did more than one film with him. Of course, Jason Robards did 2, and and James Coburn did 4. And so it's a repertory company that Sam was very loyal to and very diligent to, always working with the same people, and it's a credit to him and a credit to them that they'd stayed together for that long. Don't forget Ben Jonson and Warren Oates. They too were part of that repertory company, and without Sam, those people and vice versa would not be there where we are today with them. I think the Wild Bunch distraction was LQ and Strother. When it was if it got tense and really sort of hard to watch, you would cut to LQ and Strother for a bit of lightheartedness, and they kept your feet on the ground. The pressure was off. Sam relied on LQ and Strother to come up with stuff that would distract you from the major issue of the ultimate ending. They were the comedic distraction, and they were both very, very good at doing their own stuff on it. LQ and I went to the Carlo Vivari Film Festival together with Ali McGraw. He's always associated with Sam, so if there is going to be a retrospective, LQ comes to mind as, with me and Ali, as the longest remaining people that are still alive today to tell his story.
Oh, what excitement. What?
The Hammond Brothers, Ride the High Country, and your first film with Sam.
Yeah.
What I remember I remember a lot of things about that film, but I remember those brothers as being real interesting. Can you talk a bit about that and how that, collection of strange actors came together?
Yeah, that collection of what brain actors? Trained actors. Oh, you want to know about the Hammond Brothers, you say? Okay. You have to understand Sam. Remember I told you before, whenever he started a picture, he dissembled everybody. The actors would not speak to the other actors. The crew members would not speak to each other. Just everybody walked on eggs. Once he did that, once he got you so that you were like this for the picture, then he started putting you back together. And what he did very carefully, the Hammond Brothers, case in point. We ate together. He saw to it. We were in the same rooms or close together. If we were going to go out at night, he saw to it that we all went together, so that the Hammond became the clan. And that's what he wanted for the picture. Okay? Now then, he now takes the Hammonds, and Sam would start doing things like he would say to Joel McCrea, that's the way you're going to do it? And Joel would say, well, yeah. Well, he said, the Hammonds told me that it looked a little faggy. And Joel saying, what? Well, okay, really it's not. Let's go ahead with it. Now it's planted. And Joel doesn't like the Hammonds at all. And then he would do it with Randy Scott. And they did it with Mariette. So that not only on screen, but at night, wherever we met, it was the Hammonds against everybody else. And then he started the slogan, "Take a Hammond to lunch." Why he got started in that, I do not know. But it worked for him. You notice how clannish, how cliquish we appeared to be. And we were that way in Ride the High Country was that way. Major Dundee was that way. Warren Oates and I were brothers. And he did the same thing there. So again, it was first of all, get you where you can't stand each other, then get you where you love Sam, then get you where you love each other and consequently Sam, and then you have the Hammond brothers and you have the heavies the way Sam likes to do. Isn't that exciting? It is exciting. Okay. Why are you laughing at the camera, for Christ's sake? Oh, you know, okay.
That was such an important film, I think, in Sam's chronology of great movies. But there was something he said the other day about one film, one story being retold. Do you think that was the beginning of the telling of that story? We can speculate on that.
Okay, you're saying, again, that which we talked about. I said, when we were talking the other day, that Sam remade the same story in every picture he made. Okay? And your question is, was that it? Did it show up there? And what was the story, actually? Okay, remember I told you, and you'll have to be the judge of this, Sam's pictures were about people who had outlived their usefulness. They were dinosaurs. They were living in the wrong age. And so what do? Okay, look at Ride the High Country. You got the two pluperfect examples of that. Randy Scott, who decided, okay, you're not going to take care of me, you're not going to allow me to function, I'll become a thief, a bandit, I'll steal whatever I want. Joel McCrea decided to go the other way. Joel decided to go, the character, decided to go the way Sam's father went. And that is, if that's what you're going to give me, then I'll take it. But I'm going to do the best I can do, and I'm going to be as tough as I can be, but I'll live within those rules. And so Joel's character did, which eventually held sway over Randy. But those are his characters. The same characters are present in Ride the High Country, Major Dundee. Major Dundee was exactly that way. The Wild Bunch, Cincinnati Kid, all of them. They're all the same. Okay. Now, you wanted to know more about what I had said about Sam dissembling, my own word, the cast. There are not, God, I'm in trouble, I'm going to say it. There are not really many directors who make motion pictures anymore. They are talented, they shoot schedules, but when they get through, what you basically have is an enlarged television show. Sam had figured out, and I think rightly so, that if you're going to have a motion picture, you must maintain control over everything. And everything has to go through the director. Peckinpah decided that, and so he went to work on it. No matter who it was. It could be John David Chandler. You know who John David was? With the baby blues with the red rims? Super. Could be R.G. Armstrong, Slim Pickens, Ben Johnson, Bill Holden, Chuck. It didn't make any difference. You were ingratiated in the mall. You agreed to do the picture. And he's sitting here telling you marvelous things that he's going to do with it. Well, he's not going to do those things, but he wants your ear. Now you show up on the set, and Chuck Heston is used to a certain amount of respect. He does something wrong. The director says, cut. Chuck, let's talk for a moment or two. He says, you know, Chuck, you try to give me, don't do, no one else can hear it. Sam does, and he says, cut, Chuck, that was the worst piece of crap I've ever seen in my life. What are you doing? Well, you do it once, maybe you get a little mad. You do it twice, you begin to destroy confidence. You do it 3 or 4 times, and pretty soon an actor doesn't know what to do. A cameraman doesn't know what he's doing wrong. All Sam will say is, it's terrible. It's terrible. He won't tell you why. Now you get to the point of where you do not, A, trust yourself or believe in what you can do. Now, As soon as you get that way, if a cameraman says, look, we have to go back and pick up because he's furious. I really got it right for a moment, and this son of a bitch is screwing up his job. Now the cameraman's saying to the gaffer, what is it? What's wrong with this? Now he doesn't like the actor doesn't like the cameraman, Sam doesn't like anybody, and nobody's talking to each other. Now, blow that up by 300 times on the set with both actors, cast, producer, it didn't make any difference. Now everybody is like that on the set. Nobody's talking, nobody's offering suggestions, they're just sitting there waiting for the next boot to fall. And now Sam starts, and you do something wrong, and Sam says, cut, Chuck, we can do, your talent is, really, you've got to give us, I feel you want to, I know. Now you start building, and the next thing you know, the cameraman will not light, the director will not act, the actor will not act, the prop man won't prop until they do it, and they go to Sam and they say, And Sam says, it's marvelous. It's practically usable. Let's do it. Now, he's taken you from total ego to total lost to back to you're part of the team, and look who the team is. The team is Peckinpah. Not you and Peckinpah. The team is Peckinpah. And you learn and you go ahead with the thing from that point on. Now, had he done it on Ride the High Country, I would have said, that's just something he happened to do or try. The 8 pictures, he did it 8 times. I told you. He disassembled and put it back together, except the last one I worked on him with, which was Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. And he was very ill. The doctor had told him, you cannot do this. You must stop. You must rest. Because when Sam went to work on a picture, it's hard to understand this or even believe it. He worked 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. He never went to bed to sleep. Other things perhaps, but not to sleep. He fainted a lot when you don't get any sleep. But again, that thing which we had talked about, attention to detail. He trusted no one. He only believed in himself. And that'll take it out of you. Okay, when you're trying that and you're ill now to go along with it, you can't pull it off generally. And so, to me, and you have to understand the things I'm saying are what I think, not necessarily true. And if I'm so damn smart, how come I ain't rich? So you have to take that into account. But that's what I could see with Sam. And again, I told you on that one, the first time I saw him after an absence of like a year and a half, if someone had told me the next morning Sam had dropped dead when I left the set, I would have believed it. His color was blue. He shuffled. His arms were held at strange angles. He was in pain. And yet he was doing what he liked to do, actually, which is make a picture. He hated to shoot, but he loved to make pictures. That's enough, Jones. Shut up.
Cut. We're just on the end now, okay? You said yesterday that, very quiet now.
Yeah, very quiet there, you turkey.
That Sam was someone different to every member of the cast or crew, or to the producer, the money, and so on. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, he is different. He's an ass to most people when he's working. You normally get the difference you're talking about, and that I just brushed on. A, before you start the picture, or B, after you finished, or sometimes in the evening when he's not really harassed. But Sam was, by his training and his inclination, a Southern gentleman, if you will. That's the way his father had raised him, his whole family. So that if you met Sam between pictures, if you just bump into him on the street, you have lunch with him, he was soft-spoken. He was courteous to the point of just inanity, almost, until you started shooting. The second you started shooting, and then he'd subside a little bit and he'd go on with it. But he determined that we all act to a different carrot. I'll work to one, Struther works to another, Bill Holden, of course, works to yet a third. And he was astute in that. But again, back to the thing we talked earlier, he knew how to make motion pictures. And to do that, you have to have everybody's attention. And oddly enough, you have to have their cooperation. Hence the disassemble and put them back together to see things the way Sam sees them. Now, that's very difficult because Sam was basically insane. So a lot of the sane people on the set had a bit of trouble seeing things the way Sam saw, but it didn't make any difference. We were going to do it the way Sam wanted it. Like I told you in Ride the High Country about the Hammonds riding into Coarse Gold, singing a hymn. A hymn? These people had never heard of a hymn. And that was one of the few times where I told Sam, I'm not going to do it. You know, you're paying my salary and you're the boss, but I am not going to be insane as a Hammond riding in singing a hymn. Yes, you are, LQ. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. And so I said, you bet, I'll do it. So I went in singing the hymn. You've ever seen the picture? It's gorgeous. These people who would slice your throat and tried to for a nickel singing hymns. It worked some way. How it worked, I don't know. But the dichotomy of a motion picture is very strange, said he, like he knew what he was talking about. Shut up, let's go to the next one.
You and Strother became characters running through a lot of Sam's movies.
2, 3.
It seems like more, because it's like the carpetbaggers of the West, the guys who pull the teeth out of the corpses and so on. I mean, was this something that evolved? Was it something Sam talked about? How did that extraordinary combination of you and Strother come about and sustain itself?
How did the relationship of the characters that we did work out that way is what you're saying, actually. God, that's a tough question to answer. Strother is a brilliant actor, was a brilliant actor, could do anything. And yet, okay, this is, and I'm trying to answer the question, I don't know the answer, but we'll fumble around and find it together. Strother was petrified of Sam. I mean, petrified. An example, Wild Bunch. Before we run out in the square to claim the bodies, if you recall, we come through this huge Mexican door, 15 feet tall. We are inside, and we're just sitting around waiting for Sam to say action. And we're there talking, and we are 20, 30 feet from the door. Sam is 100 feet from there, and Sam said, Strother, no louder than that. Strother is in the middle of a sentence with me. He turns and on the dead run heads to where Sam is. The fact that the door is closed did not deter him. He slammed into this door, which had to weigh 300 pounds. Strother weighs a quick 130. He caromed back about 20 feet, trying to regain his balance. He took off again. He slammed into the door. He caromed back. I reached out and grabbed him by the seat of the pants. A stuntman opened the door, and I turned him loose. And his feet are still going, and he goes to where Sam is. Okay? That's how petrified he is of Sam. Now, he is up that high in anything he's going to do with Sam. Okay, as an actor, you sit and say, well, what do I do? What dimension can I add? And the stuff Sam had us doing, I couldn't have dropped down and gotten very serious and made it work. It would have been too much. So I said, okay, what I'll try to do is I'll try to top Strother. I go higher and louder. Well, I started that. Strother reacts, he goes higher. So that the next thing you know, we're up there screaming like that. We have no place else to go. But in Sam's pictures, it works because he wants dedication, he wants insanity, and he wants you dedicated to what you're doing. Okay? So if everybody else is there and keyed up, and they are, no matter how high you go, it'll still work. Now, that's what we did, and we did it through 2 or 3 pictures. Did it work? I don't know. You can be a judge. I can't. I look at it and say, God, why didn't I do this? Or how come I did that? Or why did Strother do this? We should have done, so forth. So you have to be the judge. Did it work? Did the relation work? You know? So you were asking about Sam showing up late on the set, which did not necessarily thrill the producer, but it was his habit. We normally had a lot of makeup and stuff to do, and there were big casts, and so we had to go early. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. We were ready by 8. And so then everybody sits around and you wait for Sam. Along about 9:30, the limo pulls up and Sam, he doesn't stop where we stop. Bob, generally, Basiglia, has set his chair up out in the middle of the set. He knows that's where he's going to shoot. So the car pulls right up. And if you're off at a distance, you see an empty chair in the middle of a set. Now, the car whips in, and you have all this attendant dust, and it whips out. But there's someone now seated in the chair. Sam, like a snake, just slithered out and sat in the chair. And he would sit there, and he got these reflective glasses, which he loved to wear. And he would just sit there, and he'd sit for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and everybody would say, who didn't know Sam, look at him. He's creating. He's deciding what marvel. Actually, what he's trying to do is to get his heart started because he was up all night again, and he's waiting for his B1 shot. And the doctor would show up about 15 minutes later, giving 50,000 units of vitamin E, and now he's up and going. And they thought he created as he sat there. But again, if you knew Sam, he knew every shot in every sequence a year before the time came to shoot it. He'd worked it all out. Now he'd let you, he pretty well knew who was going to do the parts anyway, but he knew he didn't have to think at that point in time. Now he would then take Struther. Sam knew what he wanted, but he'd let Struther run for a while, or he'd let me go, or he'd let Slim, to see if there's anything he wanted. If he wanted, he picked it up, plugged it into what he wanted done, and if it enhanced what he wanted, and you press on ahead. So you were really asking, was Sam brilliant, or if he was brilliant or very smart, what made it? One, he was a better writer than he was director. He was a superb director and understood people. But I guess the strongest point that he had was he loved to edit. He understood what film could do, what he wanted it to do. So he would, the year before, work his shots out. Then he would include you would do them. Then he would sit and he worked, I think the Wild Bunch was 4 months, and I believe, what the heck did he work on that? Was it a year and a half in the dub? Very close, very close. And he took apart, he disassembled everything, put it back together. The problem you had with him, even though he was brilliant in editing, was to get him to turn loose of something. If he shot 20 hours of film and he only put 2 on the screen, he still wanted to keep 20 hours of film. He didn't understand why he had to cut it, but as a good director, as a good editor, then he did, eventually. His editors fought him. They literally got into fights about, do we cut this or does this stay? And Lou Lombardi still got, I think, scars, or I think Sam hit him with a lamp because they didn't agree on what was to be taken out. Lou was trying to get it down to time, and I believe the assembly, you know what an assembly is, when you get through everything you think you're going to be able to use, then you start cutting. I believe the assembly was 8+ hours. You were asking about how many best friends he had or how he treated them. I can't speak for outside of the business, but inside the business, the biggest mistake you could make with Sam would be to become his best friend. There was just something to him that was a challenge. The closer you got to Sam, the less he trusted you. Because using the old theory, you'll trust a friend or listen to him, he didn't want to give himself that chance. Now, I told you the one about Slim Pickens. You want to go into that? Okay. Sam was living, I think he was in his 3rd divorce or something like that. So he's living in a trailer on the beach. Sam got plenty of money, I think, even at that time. But Slim, who lived beyond him in Thousand Oaks, would come in and he'd visit him. I'd come in from Camarillo on the way to here and visit. So he's there, and Sam is beefing and moaning about what am I going to do with this? And I don't have enough money for that. So Slim said, as only Slim could say, hey.
Hang on, shall we cut that? Where are you getting there?
Oh, they're just getting in a car there. They caught my signal. So you want to go into the Slim Pickens thing. All right. Slim lived in Thousand Oaks. He would come into town. He'd drop by and see Sam. I lived in Camarillo. I do the same thing. Sam is moaning. Slim is there. He's listening to all of the stuff. He's listening to all the woes that Sam has. And finally, as Slim, only Slim can really pull this off, said, Sam, you know, I haven't got much money. He didn't. He had a family, a lot of children, so he made a lot of money, but he spent a lot. But he said, I got about 10 grand in the bank. Tell you what, I'll give you 5,000 and I'll keep 5,000. You spend it, help yourself, and pay me back whenever you're ready. There's no hurry. If you don't pay me back, fine. Sam never again spoke to Slim Pickens after that. Would you like to try to explain that? Okay, shut up. What's your next question, sir?
What was your experience? Because you became best friends with them.
Well, he did me in. He did me in over Ballad of Cable Hogue. Yeah. You know, I had I had the chance to buy it early. I didn't. Couldn't raise enough money. We were going to do the Castaway, the James Gould cousin story. My company was going to put up the money, not much, but was going to put it up. My attorney stole the money that we had in trust. Sam was so mad he was going to sue me because someone else stole my money and he couldn't make his picture. But anyway, we had enough left so that he wanted to buy the Ballad of Cable Hogue. And he wanted to make it. He wanted to direct it. I was going to help with the production, whatever. So I put up the money for the first payments. There were only 2. He bought it. We made it with Warner Brothers. To this day, I've never gotten a penny of the money back. And it's one of those funny things. We were on the set all of the time. And so I would say, Sam, when I get my 5 grand back, listen, LQ, now when you write in, you know, be sure that you're, and we'd go through that and we'd do a little shooting. And I'd say, would there be a pause? And I'd say, Sam, about my money. Yeah, okay, Chuck, what I want you could never get an answer. Never, ever get an answer. But I never got my money either. So Sam was a little swift.
What about the greater family? And, you know, there was a time on one of the films where you wanted to pick up a shot on cable and flew you in. Can you tell us that story?
Now say it again. I'm sorry, I missed it.
On Cable Hogue.
Right.
He wanted to do a shot which was quite unnecessary, and you were committed to another film.
Oh, okay.
The greater family splitting up.
Yeah, okay. It was the Peckinpah stock company, and there were about 15 of us in it. We did Ballad of Cable Hogue. Strother and I finished. Strother came back here. I was doing a picture, and in another state. Now it comes time they finally finished, and they're going to wrap. But Sam wants to have a big party. So he decides the way to have the party. I'm shooting, so I can't get loose. He decides the way to do that is to say he wants to make some retakes. So first he calls, and I say, Sam, I can't do it. We're shooting. I can't get up. He then has Sheila Clegg, who was the production lady, call the producer and tell him the problem. He said, we got a problem. It was a Saturday. It was our big production day. We had like 200 plus extras. All of the principals were involved. And he said, LQ's in every scene. I cannot do it. Sam moaned. He complained. Finally, I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll try after lunch to be through with him. Okay, so after lunch, maybe we'll try. At 6 o'clock that morning, a plane flew in from Sam's location and landed to wait to take me. First pressure point. He called about every 30 minutes to say, can LQ get loose? Finally, the producer, the director got so mad, they said, LQ, go, please, give us a break. I jumped in the plane. We flew through weather. I thought we were going to crash. It didn't make any difference. We landed at the strip at Echo Bay. As we taxied to a halt, the stretch out is there with wardrobe and makeup in it. I get out of the plane into the limo. We strike out for the set. I'm changing clothes. They're putting on makeup. We get there, step out. Lucian Ballard is saying, Sam, you got maybe 10 minutes. That's it if you're going to shoot. Okay, get over there, Strother. Get over, LQ. This is what I want you to do. It's the opening shot of the picture. We're leading a jackass in. Here we come. We get there, we do it, Struther screws up. Cut. LQ, you go over. Struther, you idiot. You blithering idiot. Do you realize you have screwed my... We're going to do it one more time. And poor Lucian saying, you got 3 minutes now. We do the shot. We do it again. We get to the camera. We take off. This time I screwed up. Totally screwed up. Cut. We are a block and a half away from the camera. And Sam started in. Brother Martin, you blithering idiot. You will never work in pictures again. You dumb son of a bitch. I will see. You will be lucky. You will be lucky if you're alive after today. I'm going to kill you. You can't. Now, we're coming back, and he's on Struther's case. I've screwed up. I split off. I go over and pick up a drink, and I come back, and he's still on top of Struther. And he's screaming. He's furious. And I'd say, Sam, he said, LQ, stay out of this. This man has screwed me out of my shot. Now, mind you, we've already got the shot in the can. We do not need it. When they put the picture together, the other shot is the one that's there, but he's having Struther. He's going on. He goes on for another 5 minutes. I finally say, Sam, listen. He said, LQ, I'm telling you, if you say one more word, you'll never work again. Struther, this is it. This is your career. You will never work in pictures again. He finally ran down. And I said, Sam, I screwed up. What? What are you saying? I said, it wasn't Struther. I was the one that screwed up. Yeah? He left me. He turned back to Struther and he said, you idiot. Do you mean to tell me you stood there and let me chew on you and you had not made the mistake? You're an idiot. And he was back on him again. 10 more minutes. He still was at him. Good. That's Peckinpah. And so, you see, you jumped on my statement about Sam making the same picture over and over again. Most directors do, or their good films are basically about the same. He did it. Why? You know, I could try to appear to be very erudite, philosophical, I don't know. But if you look at his stories, every story, and see if you can pick one that does not fit, it is about a person or a group that have lived beyond their usefulness. Their way of living no longer exists. And he normally personified it by gunmen who were used to living by that, who had gone into the dinosaur. He's lived into the next age. Now, that group no longer exists. There's no way for it to exist other than to become a pain, a burr into the saddle blanket. And then the group, the person, tries to get a fulfillment out of life. He tries to be. They talked about it, Bill Holden and Ernie in The Wild Bunch. Remember when they were what was it? Yeah, it was in The Wild Bunch where they were bedded down in the stable and they were trying to determine what they were doing and why. Okay, that's in every one of his pieces. Why? Because I think Sam believed that was the way humanity is. I think he believed that's the way, at least the life around him. If it was not the way it was the way he perceived it. And I think even more important, the way he wanted it to be. And so each time he approached it from a slightly different angle with a little different input, but it's still the same. They try to compete and they can't make it. And they go out in a burst of flame. And that's basically what his characters did in Ride the High Country, The Wild Bunch, Dundee, Getaway. Came close to it in Straw Dogs, The Getaway, it went that way. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. The Lady Is My Wife, no. Noon Wine, yeah. But it was that person trying to compete and he couldn't make it. Okay, the question always is of someone like Sam, what makes him great? Ford was great because he studied art and he knew to compose and he did so. Sam's was attention to detail. We're doing The Wild Bunch. We have done a shot 6 weeks before. We are now doing the close-ups. We did the long shot. We're doing the close-ups. We do mine. We get through. And Sam eventually asks the prop man, what do you think about the shot? And he says, well, it's fine, Sam. Sam says, and his only question was, how many beans are on his plate? And the guy says, what are you talking about? How do I know how many hell beans are on his plate? Sam said, there are 7. There are 7 beans on his plate. When we did the long shot, you couldn't have seen us. That's how far away they were. Beans, when we did the long shot, Sam had counted them. There were 13 beans. He then wanted 13 beans when we did the close-up. Now, it is that attention to detail which marked almost all of Sam's pictures. That separated him from me. He worked at it 24 hours a day to watch his detail. And when push comes to finally shove, if you try to understand Peckinpah as you try to understand normal people, you're in trouble. We're doing another picture. This is when he's been fired from Cincinnati Kid. He can't get a job. Danny Melnick takes a chance with him on Noon Wine, the Catherine N. Porter thing. I'm there for wardrobe. It's late in the evening. I've done the wardrobe. Sam says, come up. We're talking. He kind of gets a little bit mellow, and he says, LQ, how come I can't get a job? And I said, very simple, Sam, you're an asshole. You pick on little people. They can't fight back. Really? Well, maybe you're right. He said, listen, I tell you what, when we shoot this one, you watch me. You keep a close eye on me and see the phone rings. He picks it up. It's the little wardrobe girl. She's there at 9 o'clock at night. She asks a question about my wardrobe, and he says to her, "You stupid bitch! Don't you understand? I'm an artist. I'm creating, and you're interfering with what I'm doing." And he slams the phone down, turns back to me and says, "So you watch me very carefully, and you see if I ever get where I pick on anybody small." Now, explain Peckinpah to me.
A reflex action.
It was a reflex action. The phone and her, and that's probably why he climbed on people's case. He was so frustrated when it wasn't exactly as he wanted it, and he snapped out. There's no excuse for it. You know, with me, I told him, "You don't have enough talent to direct me to the men's room," and then he left me alone. But he was constantly on Bill Holden. He was on anybody who worked for him, except Lucian Ballard. He never, ever pushed Lucian, and he wouldn't push me very often. So, what's other questions you got? If that's answered to your...
That's fine.
Okay.
Action director. You said he's one of the great action directors. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, as Sam, as far as being an action director, if you look at his stuff, he was able to give everybody in the piece, everybody in the sequence, mobility, action, movement. He involved them in the plot, in the shot, even though you didn't really need it, to such an extent that his use of action became a character trait, a part of the character that you did. If just sometime watch his pictures and watch how he details every person into the action. It's tough to do. Watch good directors. Ford couldn't do it. Ford handled a few people, big chases maybe, but there were a lot of people that were just sitting there watching or that didn't care. Sam's not true. Everybody is involved in his action one way or another, even though you really have nothing to contribute. So it's you know, I direct. I can't direct that way. I don't know who the heck can. Can you? No? Okay. So, you have another question? Is how much are we being paid? Is that your other question? No? Okay. The cameraman wants twice. What?
On the violence thing, on the question of violence, what's your feeling about the criticism of that the films are overly violent? Is there a poetry of violence there?
He made it poetic. I think other than when he started his own fights, which he either never stayed for or never won, he didn't believe in violence. But it's the same old thing. Hey, if you direct, he figured out, Sam was not dumb, he figured out what would make his material different from someone else's. Why would they hire Sam Peckinpah instead of John Ford, for instance? And action was the thing he thought he could do well and proved that he could do well, but it was not gratuitous. The Wild Bunch did it, and if you can believe this, in the assembly, that 8-hour plus job, people were being disemboweled, heads blown off, arms flying in the air, and the audience, when I was watching it, would sit there and start to laugh. You start to titter, because the line between tragedy and comedy is very, very slight. And once you become a little bit thudded out of your mind with violence, it starts to get a little bit funny. And I think probably in that one, he finally realized that he had gone too far and allowed Lou to bring it back and put it in the confines. Because I think the opening thing where we had the shootout, where they're trying to rob the place, I think that ran like an hour. An hour! And when we did the final print, 15 minutes, which was plenty. So, shut up. What's your next question?
How do you think he'll be remembered?
Fondly. Yeah, I think Sam will be forgotten fairly quickly, probably very close to it right now. But then students of real motion pictures will find him again. And I think 10 years down the line, he'll be bigger than he was, or maybe 20 years. He'll be bigger than he was when he was trotting the earth, as it were. Because I think people will see that he had something to say. Whether you agreed with what the message was is immaterial. You would have to take your hat off to the way he told it. And so I think he'll get huge. Is he great? Who knows? Will he last? Again, who knows? But I think he's one of the greats of our business. And eventually, he'll find his niche and will be fondly remembered. So,
If he was back here now, just briefly, to say one thing.
Is he?
Maybe.
No,
What
okay.
would you say?
What would I say, or what would he say? What would I say? What would I say if Sam were here right now? Man, where's the $5,000 you owe me? For Christ's sake, I don't know. What would you say to Sam? I don't know. It's tough. Again, I was very close to Sam, and we had strange language. We talked one with the other. My guess would be if he showed up right now, other than the 5,000, which I would certainly touch on, and which I would certainly not get an answer for, I think we'd ignore it as though he'd been here the whole time. Just like we hadn't talked together for a couple of weeks. We did that on pictures. I would not see Sam or hear from him, let's say for a month, 2 months, 5 months. The phone would ring. And he said, and when you make your entrance here, what I want you to do is, and I knew what he was saying. I knew what he was talking about. I didn't need all the stuff that went beforehand. We shorthanded, and you're out of film, so we might as well give the whole thing up. So you're talking about the way Sam handled his life in bars. We have gone to visit a hospital where a little stunt lady has been injured. Sam, Ben Johnson, the driver, his guitarist, and myself. We have been thrown bodily from the hospital because of the singing and dancing in the hospital room. We get in the car, we go about a block, we stop at a bar, we stay there for about 2 hours. It's now 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. I'm the only sober one simply because I don't drink. The fumes are getting to me. But anyway, we get in the car, we're going home. Sam says, "Stop, stop," and he starts to jump out of the car. And I've reached up and I grabbed him by the shoulder and part of the arm. I've got my feet on the ceiling trying to hold him in. He escapes. He goes into the bar. We say, okay, and we follow him. We get inside, he orders a drink. It's a place where they will literally slit your throat for $1. Literally. He orders a drink, takes the drink, drinks it, spits it out, and said, "You've been pissing in the beer again," and the fight was on. Literally, the fight was on. About 15 minutes later, I think it was Ben, about 15 minutes later, we are back to back in a corner, fighting people off with knives, guns, broken bottles, and we're looking around for Sam. Sam is not there. Sam had started the fight, got it well underway, went outside, got in the car, and drove him, or had him drive him back to the set, and left Ben and I to finish the fight. And believe me, I'm not stretching. We are very close to having our throat slit over something Sam did. And so, folks, with that in mind, why don't I shut up and leave you alone, and you can cut this mess. And a good night all.
Cut.
Did we get it in time?